There is a little bit of progress to report in the deadly wildfires that have been burning in Northern California. Dion Lim of our affiliate KGO is there in Redding, California, which has been ground zero for some of the worst of it. And you can see behind her the toll that these fires have taken. Dion, thank you so much for joining us. We have heard now that the fire is 20% contained, but when you look behind you, what does that even mean?
Yeah, Aaron, it doesn't sound like a lot, but compared to over the weekend, we were at containment of just about 5%. Take a look around me. This is one of the hardest hit areas. We're about 15 minutes or so northwest of downtown, and you can try and make out the layout of this home. This appears to be what's left of a garage, along with perhaps some grills and a water tank and some shells of burned out vehicles and some trailers, and the only thing standing really is just the fireplace. Something that is so interesting with this fire, because firefighters have been battling those high winds mixed with the heat, you never know where the flames are going to strike. Just a few feet to my right, you can see one of the few homes that really has been unscathed. I mean, one side, you see the bushes are bright and green, even flowering, and then on the other side, brown and charred. Something interesting to go along with the high winds that we're experiencing. Meteorologists are calling this a phenomenon. You may have seen the video. It's pretty remarkable. A fire-nado, and it is just like what you would imagine it to be, a fire tornado. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of trees that are down, branches in the middle of the streets. This is a very common scene here in Redding, and it is exactly why many people who I've spoke with over the past few days call this one of the worst, if not the worst, in Shasta County history.
Yeah, I'm curious how people are coping, Dion, because to look at that apocalyptic scene, even if your home is left standing, could you imagine coming home and then looking at your neighbor's house and seeing complete devastation? How are people holding up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I've been at many evacuation shelters, people who have been evacuated from homes that look like this up on the hill that are just a shell, and then people who also, yes, are not affected. Their homes are still intact, but they don't want to be there because you see the devastation everywhere you turn. And because we're talking about some 40,000 evacuees, the emergency shelters are maybe not at capacity, but do not have the resources to accommodate all of these people. So day by day, just yesterday, I spoke with the Red Cross evacuation center, and they told me that they're opening new shelters day by day and really trying to get as many people housed as possible so they do not have to be in conditions like this.
Dion, such vivid images behind you. Our thanks to you. Dion Lim with our affiliate KGO out of San Francisco from Redding, California. ABC's Kana Whitworth is also there with more on these deadly fires and the toll they've taken on lives.
Aaron, firefighters here are utterly exhausted. They're working 24-hour shifts, many of them for days on end. Some firefighters were actually out fighting the Ferguson fire, were directly sent here to the Carr fire. Other first responders losing their own homes. I spoke with a firefighter yesterday who was out on the fire lines while his home burned down. And this is the destruction that you're seeing here behind me. So imagine the fire racing down that hill back there and just torching everything in sight. I mean, it's reducing these homes to ash. This is the roof, and it's turned into ash. And if you walk this way, I mean, you can see that's the front door of this family's home. And coming further in, you can get a better idea of what this destruction looks like. So, I mean, this is 3 separate homes here that have just been gutted. But destruction like this, I mean, it carries on for 150 square miles because this fire is burning more than 95,000 acres. It has destroyed more than 600 homes and damaged others. It's also, as you know, turned deadly. 6 people have been killed, but the sheriff's office is telling us they have 7 people right now that have been reported missing that they're currently looking for. So firefighters, while they call this unprecedented and a worst case scenario, I mean, they've never seen fire behavior quite like this, they're also mourning as they battle this fire. So we're expecting temperatures above 100 degrees here again in Redding today. A little bit of good news, though, is that they have this fire at 17% containment, Aaron. So they're really hoping that they can try and get a handle on this thing.
We're hoping for good news, too. ABC's Kana Whitworth from Redding, California. It's where one of 17 wildfires are burning in the state. And as we hope for better conditions, we get the reality on the forecast from our senior meteorologist, Rob Marciano, now.
Hello, Aaron. I can tell you, just getting back from the fire zone, the scenes and the stories from there are just horrific, and some of the conditions are just horrifying as well that the firefighters are having to deal with. A number of fire engines, fire departments are converging from across not just the state, but the entire West. And here's one company that got out there in the middle of the flames yesterday, show you how hot it was burning and how hot it can burn. It sometimes can create its own weather, own wind, own fire whirls, or some people like to call them fire tornadoes. Or they're not like a tornado, but they can have winds nearly as strong as that. And we've seen that away from the flames. Look at these trees knocked down just from wind that was created from the intense fire over the weekend. So conditions not really improving all that much, may cool down a few degrees as we go through time, but it's building today in the Pacific Northwest with temperatures well into the 90s in places like Portland and Seattle, and higher than that when you go east of the Cascades, and still inland areas of California will see temperatures over 100 degrees easily in Redding today, and Bakersfield and Riverside, where fires continue to burn. You see there maybe cooling a few degrees, but it's sure not going to rain. So we're looking at conditions to be continually tough. Pattern, meanwhile, is going to shift back to a rainy and moist one, and a humid one, and a warm one, and a tropical one, with a connection down to the south across the east. So the next several days for the eastern third, significant rainfall, and some of these areas are still saturated from the flooding of last week's pattern. So another 2 to 4 inches in some spots. So active weather, dry, hot in the west, and warm and humid in the east. Aaron?
Okay, Rob, thanks. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano. We're going to turn to Washington now and bring in ABC's Tara Palmieri, who's with us from the White House, because over the weekend, Tara, President Trump was threatening to shut down the government over his immigration policies, and specifically the building of the wall. What's the latest?
That's right, Aaron. And some Republicans that I spoke to, officials on the Hill, said they were shocked and frankly confused to hear the president threatening a shutdown, because just last week at the White House, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Paul Ryan met with President Trump, and they agreed that they would delay the vote on controversial voting measures, spending measures like funding the border wall, until after the midterm elections, because they don't want to have a messy government shutdown before the midterms. They see the political implications of this.
We know the president has the ability, and often does through Twitter, like to drop bombs in the middle of the race, but this cannot be music to any Republican who's running in the midterms. This has to hurt.
Right. It's definitely not something they want to draw attention to. They don't want the appearance that the Republican conference is not functional before the midterms, in which they ask them to vote for more Republicans to let them keep the House. I know yesterday there were lots of phone calls going on between Republicans on the Hill and the White House trying to figure out, what does the president mean? Is he not sticking to his word?
Tara, we are still listening to the president's legal team try and come up with a coherent strategy to deal with Michael Cohen, to deal with the Mueller investigation, even as they try to govern policy. And over the weekend, Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, said that Michael Cohen ought to pipe down.
That's right. I spoke to Rudy Giuliani this weekend. He actually told me that they ended their joint legal defense agreement, meaning they're not sharing information anymore. And most importantly, the Trump campaign won't be covering Cohen's legal bills. And as we know, he's under investigation in the Southern District of New York, so he could probably use the financial help with that. But yeah, it's a big break between the two. He's called him a liar. He said that he may have doctored the tapes that he handed over to prosecutors. They're really assassinating his character right now. And
they're undoubtedly trying to discredit him before he does any damage. But what can Michael Cohen at this point do to the president? And what is Rudy Giuliani so fearful of, that he's trying this scorched earth type strategy?
Well, think about this. Michael Cohen has been his attorney for how many years? 15 years. He knows where the bodies are buried, and he's not just his attorney, he's known as his fixer. He's the guy that deals with women alleging affairs, as we heard from that tape where they talked about how to pay off former Playboy bunny Karen McDougal, who claimed that she had an affair with President Trump. He's been the one who fixes the problems that come through. They say this is typical for high net worth individuals to have people coming forward, threatening them with information. But, Michael Cohen has been there side by side for decades. He knows a lot. And we reported that he claims that President Trump knew about the Trump Tower meeting. This is a crucial piece of evidence, if true.
And part of the reason, undoubtedly, why the president's legal team is trying to fight Cohen tooth and nail. Is there any sense that you're getting, though, Tara, that Michael Cohen is prepared to pipe down, to stay quiet?
Well, Michael Cohen hasn't actually spoken out yet, but the fact that we've heard these tapes, these confidential tapes that he taped the president, he was unknowing about it. I mean, the Trump legal team allowed them to be released, but I don't think this is the end of Michael Cohen's story. We don't know actually if he's agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, but he's certainly dropping hints that he has information and he's worthy of speaking to.
ABC's Tara Palmieri with us from the White House. Tara, our thanks to you. We're going to turn up to New York City now, where the board of CBS is now behind closed doors trying to figure out whether Les Moonves can continue to be in control of the company after he was accused by 6 women of sexual misconduct. ABC's Eva Pilgrim is with us from Manhattan, not far from the CBS corporate headquarters. What is this board discussing, Eva?
Well, the board is actually on a conference call, and they are discussing whether or not it is a good idea at this point for Les Moonves to step aside as they investigate these claims of sexual misconduct against him. As you mentioned, there were 6 women that have come forward. This New Yorker magazine expose that was released details their allegations, and it ranges from unwanted kissing to sexual assault. Now, Ronan Farrow, the journalist who wrote that article, spoke to us this morning about why those women decided to come forward.
The goals of these women coming forward, both the 6 with allegations about Mr. Moonves and also dozens more talking about a culture of abuse across CBS's different divisions, weren't aiming to take people down. The goal here was to expose stories that had been buried for a long time.
And in his article, he does take it even further outside of just these Les Moonves allegations to talk about the culture there at CBS and several other people coming forward sharing their stories as well. Now, Moonves saying in a statement, "I always understood and respected and abided by the principle that no means no, and I have never misused my position to harm or hinder anyone's career." The CBS board saying they will fully investigate these claims and will promptly review the findings and take appropriate action. As we were talking about, that board is supposed to have this conference call today where they discuss what they will do next. They're going to appoint a special committee to investigate these claims, but we are also hearing that they are planning to do more than that, also look into the culture and see if this is indeed an issue with the culture at CBS. Aaron?
And it's interesting you say, Eva, because one of the most eyebrow-raising things in the New Yorker piece that Ronan Farrow wrote about was not squarely focused on Moonves, but about the broader culture at CBS, specifically CBS News.
That's exactly right, Aaron. A lot of the stories that Ronan shared in the article were of people who worked in the news division. One of the former workers talking about how a lot of the older men that worked at 60 Minutes would greet her by kissing her on the mouth, and talked about how uncomfortable that was. And there were countless stories sort of that same vein, explaining in the articles what a lot of these people were up against.
ABC's Eva Pilgrim with us from Manhattan. The board of CBS now meeting to determine whether Les Moonves can continue to be in control of CBS while that investigation goes on. For more on all of these stories, you can download the ABC News app. Check it out on abcnews.com. For now, I'm Aaron Katersky. Thanks for watching ABC News Live.